Well, hello and welcome to Vintage Car History. I'm Wild Bill, and this is a great week because this marks several milestones. One of which is the fact that this channel went live a year ago this week. It's been a year of me doing this and of y'all watching this, and we made it through it. It was great. And also, in the process, we now have 1,000 subscribers, a little more than that now. So, obviously, some folks are liking what we're doing here, and I've got a great fan base that's been building. Love you folks. You know, James MacArthur, Gabriel F., Liz J., Cornfed Lady, Zippy DeStrange. You know, I could go on and on and on. Of folks that have been so supportive. Craig Hoppenbridge, there's a little. Of my channel and what we've been doing here, what I've been wanting to share with y'all. And so, in honor of all of this and some of the things that are happening in the future, so you'll hear about that in a bit, I wanted to spend some time here talking about vintage car history. How did this channel even get to be in existence? Well, let's start, like I usually do, at the beginning. It was in 1972, and I was a young lad of about 4 years old, when our family was moving to a new home in the city of Anaheim, California. And at around dusk, the truck that I was riding in, that was moving the household, pulled in for gas at a gas station, and I saw a car there, unlike anything I'd ever seen. Now, mind you, this is 1972. And so cars from the 60s and 50s at that point in time were not classics. They were just old cars still on the road. And you still had cars from the 30s and 40s, on the roads at that point. But this car was something very different and special, and I knew it. And while they were gassing up, I crawled myself out of that truck, and I went and I looked at this thing closely. I was fascinated by it. And finally, they got me out of, whoever it was' way. Again, I was only 4. And we went on our way and did our thing. But I bugged my parents about this, and finally my mom took me to the library so that I could go and look it up, because I want to know, what was this car? And it took me about 2 weeks at the library, but I finally found it, and it was a 1914 Stutz Bearcat. Now, for those of you who have a Mercer, I'm sorry, that it was, not a Mercer. But that car was so unique to me and was so different, and you could tell, I could tell at least, that it wasn't like a Model T. This car was special. And then I continued reading. Yeah, at 4, I did that kind of thing back then. That it was the car that made good in a day, and at the Indianapolis 500, and I'm like, well, what? I wanted to know more, and that's how I got started in cars. Thankfully, I had some very supportive parents who began to get me some books about the topic. And I'll tell you what, if you can find any books by any of these authors, you're going to want them. Let's go a couple of them. You've got, of course, David Burgess Weiss. His work, whatever he wrote, awesome, get into it. Peter Roberts, Phil Drackett, Andrew White. And as I grew up, I was reading this kind of information about the automobile, because what I love about these particular books is that they're not just about the car. They're about the people. They're about the places. They're about the events. They're about what it took to create the automobile and the automobile industry. And so I just love them. In fact, I unusually for a young man in 1982, bought myself a classic car as my first car. And here it is. This is a 1948 Chrysler DeSoto Custom. Suicide doors, dark green, thing looks like an alligator on the road. But this was the first car I bought as a young man. And unfortunately, when I joined the Navy back in 1986, I had to sell the car. But this is where we take the next chapter, because I did spend 8 years in the Navy, from 1986 to 1984. Served on several ships, including the USS Barbie, which was actually in the Straits of Hormuz the very day Saddam invaded Kuwait in August 2nd, 1990. I was there, and my job was as a fire control technician. Now, just to be clear, a fire control technician has nothing to do with fighting fires. My job was to start them on the enemy. I was the guy running the fire control equipment, the radars, the range finders, etc., and then actually pulling the trigger or pressing the button to go boom. I was launching tomahawks into Baghdad. I was, firing, the deck cannons, on U.S. Navy ships. I was using the M50 machine guns, when we had small boat attacks. So, yeah, that was what I did for 8 years in the Navy. And after my naval days, I have, of course, still loved antique cars and continued to study them. But really the next phase of why this channel exists is because of someone you may have heard of, some of you may have heard of, Drachinifel. Now, here's the thing. About almost 5 years ago, I found his channel, and I just loved it, because what he's doing is giving naval history, and even though he's, a British man, he's all over the world with it. He doesn't, it doesn't have to be just Royal Navy. It's everywhere, and he's thorough, and he gives these little 5, 6, 7, he calls them 5-minute guides, but frankly, we all know that God knows how long they're going to be. But nonetheless, he's giving these concise guides that, hey, you've got enough information, and if you want to know even more, you now know enough to find out more. And I loved what he was doing. Became a Patreon of his channel. First one I ever did, only one for that matter. And it was about a year and a half ago that I approached him and said, you know what, you've inspired me, because here's the thing I was thinking, is that what he was doing for ships, who was doing that for cars? Because I've always loved that biographical, detailed history, and I couldn't find it on YouTube. And I'm like looking at what he's doing, and I'm saying, you know what, maybe I could do that. Probably not as well. Definitely couldn't do it about ships. But that was my inspiration. And so when I reached out to him and said, you know what, I'd like some advice, how could I actually do this and create a channel like that? He came back to me and said, here's what to do, and was incredibly encouraging. And for the next 6 months, I was back and forth with Drachinifel saying, okay, well, what do I do with this? How do I do this? What do I, if this happens? And of course he's saying, well, you do this, you do that, you do this, and that don't worry about, and just get on with it and get it freaking done. Well, he wasn't like that, but the freaking done. But what Drachinifel did was set my expectations that if I really wanted to start a YouTube channel that did history, then I've got to make some serious commitments. And am I willing to do that? And it was on February 6th of 2021 that commitment was shown. And again, 6 months of work before even then. I mean, the first 8 episodes that were posted, I had already written, filmed, and they were already done. Because I wanted to make a biographical history of the car and talk about the cars, but talk about the people and the places, the events which you've seen me do. And even as I'm, traveling along this road of making a YouTube channel, Drakkenfell has been there. We still, at least through email, we talk quite a bit. And I wanted to design this channel, for something very specific. And I wanted it to be like if you started from episode 1 to, and just go sequentially, it's like getting a college course. Not that I've been to college, I haven't. I'm ignorant. But what I do know is the history of the automobile. And so if you want to start at episode 1 and then just at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you'll notice that there's a progression, a time progression that's found in the channel. And this was important to me to create. And thankfully, apparently some people like it and like what I've been doing. And I'm really grateful for the work because that I've done and that my wife has suffered me to do. Because this is really a lifestyle change, and who would have thought, a year ago that I could say, okay, I'll quiet on the set, and we would know what to do to quiet the house down and everything else, and the amount of writing involved and research involved, because it does take a lot of work, to make a channel like this. But I love doing it, and what's great is that a lot of people have loved what I've done, and this has been incredible in the last few months. And I can tell you, 2022, a whole lot of awesomeness is going to be happening. We've got opportunities now to go and look at some incredible artifacts, incredible cars, interview with incredible people, curators, restorers, owners of some awesome vehicles. And this is now starting to happen. And it took a year because, quite frankly, who am I to go and do this unless there's proof that, yeah, I really am somebody that loves these cars. And here's the proof, and it's because of you folks that we're finally at that point where we're over 1,000 subscribers, people that really care, really like what I'm doing, and frankly, you inspire me. So thank you for 1,000 subscribers. Thank you for enjoying the channel, and thank you for taking that interest in history of this portion of what our humanity has built, the automobile, and why it's so important and how it got here. Don't ever forget your history. That's a sin. Remember it, and let's keep on going for the next thousands or 10,000s or whatever, because I'm not going anywhere, at least not in the near future. And thankfully, hopefully, you won't be either. This has been a fun year. Thank you for the 1,000 subscribers. And we're going to just keep on getting better and better from this point. Peace.